watched the press conference, obviously, and then I read the transcript of it. When you read it, it sounds lawyerly and elegant, but it was not persuasive. I don't think he persuaded anybody that he did the right thing.
Your prediction, does he go or stay?
Who?
Acosta.
I don't think he'll be around by Friday.
We shall see.
Well, tomorrow's Friday.
Yes.
If you woke up this morning wondering just how bad it is for Donald Trump's labor secretary, Alex Acosta, who negotiated a sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein when he was Miami's top prosecutor, it is so bad that Fox News doesn't think he'll last until the weekend. Adding to Acosta's political problems, his reasoning for the lenient sentence for Epstein doesn't pass much legal muster either, as three former prosecutors outlined in a new piece where they call his excuses nonsensical and self-serving. One of their main points, how Acosta said he got involved in the case because it had been left to the state attorney's office. Epstein would have walked free. It was a statement so glaring that just hours after the press conference, that Palm Beach state attorney at the time released this statement, quote, "I can emphatically state that Mr. Acosta's recollection of this matter is completely wrong. Federal prosecutors do not take a backseat to state prosecutors. No matter how my office resolved the state charges, the U.S. Attorney's Office always had the ability to file its own federal charges. If Mr. Acosta was truly concerned with the state's case and felt he had to rescue the matter, he would have moved forward with the 53-page indictment that his own office drafted. Mr. Acosta should not be allowed to rewrite history." Joining our conversation, national correspondent for Vanity Fair, Emily Jane Fox. Emily, this seems like the kind of story that will stay on a slow burn, no matter what other horrors the Trump White House rolls out for us to focus on day in, day out, for a few reasons. Jeffrey Epstein was doing what Jonathan Swan from Axios described yesterday as an industrial-scale pedophilia operation, and it ensnared lots of powerful people. And Donald Trump was once in his social circle.
Sure, Donald Trump was once in a social circle. President Bill Clinton was once in a social circle. A prince from England was once in a social circle. I am sure
Alan Dershowitz was in his social circle.
There is a very thick black book with a lot of powerful people in it, and I am sure there are many of those very thick black books. And I hope this stays on our radar, and I think it's our responsibility to keep it on our radar. This is someone who was dealing with some of the most powerful people in the universe, some of whom are in the most powerful positions currently. And he was trafficking children. This is not something that we should let go. And I think this is something that if Democrats are smart, will continue to bring up and not let the president off the hook about. They should not let the labor secretary off the hook about it either. And I think this will continue to unravel, but we should help it to continue to stay in the news as well.
Rick, I monitor Fox News. Watch would be an overstatement of my time spent there, but I monitor Fox News to see where the president will feel pressure, and to see Napolitano on Fox and Friends, one of the president's most favorite programs on that network, say Acosta doesn't make it to the weekend, has to be the single worst data point for Alex Acosta in the last 48 hours.
And he has a record of being candid where he's disagreed with the president. And yes, I'm sure it's disturbing.
Napolitano, not Acosta.
Napolitano, yes. Thank you for that correction. But the thing to keep in mind here are two things. First of all, the victims. But secondly, the reason Epstein plays into everything we've been talking about for 2 years is he's a person for whom the rule of law doesn't apply.
Right.
Every stage of the way, he just assumes I can get out of it through connections, through money. There was a story in the New York Post, I believe today or yesterday, that the NYPD didn't monitor him for the years since that agreement here in New York City. He's a guy who's always gotten away with stuff. That's the social circle that they're all in, are people who get away with criminality and aren't punished for it. And the fact is he's going to get his comeuppance, and he deserves it.
And what about, Ron Klain, this idea that Acosta's story didn't hold up, for 12 hours? He invoked state prosecutors who are alive and kicking and were very able to put out statements correcting the record. He released documents where it's not abundantly clear that those meetings in private hotel rooms happened or went down at the exact time in the timeline that he suggested, or that they had the effect or lack thereof that he suggested. I mean, he now has put out a story that already seems to be falling apart.
Yeah, it didn't not hold up 12 hours. It didn't hold up 12 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, as you listen to him deliver this thing that Judge Napolitano rightly called an extremely lawyerly defense, he didn't notify the victims as federal law requires because there was no prosecution to notify them about, because he chose not to bring a prosecution. I mean, that's just a crazily legal reason to defend what a federal judge ruled was a violation of federal law in his handling of the victims. But look, the real truth here, Nicole, is Alex Acosta is the kind of labor secretary that only someone with a history of sexual assault like Donald Trump would put in the job in the first place. Most of the stuff was known when he was picked, when the Senate confirmed him. The crimes now being investigated in New York occurred years and years ago. A lot of them did. And so, he is Trump's labor secretary, and the greatest most crazy thing at all is he's now the federal official in charge of protecting against the trafficking of young women in many professions. And so we've got a guy who blinked on this before in charge of enforcing the law now.
Jeremy Bash, there is a string and a thread, tragically, that runs through all of these stories in tone and tenor. And even if there isn't a direct line between Jeffrey Epstein's conduct and anything that Donald Trump has described in media accounts that he had a falling out with Epstein, this is still in Acosta, someone who saw to it to be the architect of a sweetheart deal that let him essentially get off scot-free, not notify his victims. Acosta, of course, has a tie to Donald Trump. I mean, there's never, forget about 6 degrees of separation. They're always only about 2.
And building on Ron's point, Nicole, I mean, if the president thought that human trafficking was a problem, if he thought that modern slavery was something that should be prosecuted, should be outlawed, then he would have fired Acosta from the moment that this story was revealed by the Miami press organizations, or the actually should say the extent of the story was revealed. And we already kind of understand that the incompetency of the vetting organization during the transition missed this. We get this. We get that a lot of incompetent, unqualified, and problematic individuals came into the administration. But now that the president has in the clear light of day all of this new information laid out by his own Justice Department in these new charges, he should relieve Acosta of his job. I'm
going to ask you, I know that I say this, and ask you what Fox and Friends asked their guests. I mean, do you think Acosta, I just don't see what the vehicle will be for pushing Acosta out. There's nothing about this story so far that seems to have offended Donald Trump, that seems to have offended Melania Trump or Ivanka Trump or Jared. I'm not sure who else has a vote in that West Wing.
That's right. No, I mean, the problem is we've got 2 things that Donald Trump loves. One, men who are accused of sexual assault. He feels an immediate affinity for them. He put one on the Supreme Court to a lifetime appointment. 2, shamelessness, right? He did not come out, Acosta did not come out and say, you know what, I apologize to the victims, or I'm even sorry for the victims. He came out and said, I did what I did, I defend it. That is the new modus operandi that Donald Trump has obviously been the one to show the Republican Party. Yeah. This is how you deal with it. If you don't apologize, the Democrats and the media will just keep talking about it, and then they'll just have nothing else to do. It is a Rubicon that we've passed in our politics, and I don't know that we're ever going to get it back. A sense of shame, a sense of some kind of dignity in the office, whatever it is, whether it's labor secretary or the U.S. attorney in Miami or the president of the United States. I don't know that we can get that back, and certainly not while this man, who's already been credibly accused of sexual assault by dozens of women, is still in the White House.
I guess my question about Ivanka Trump is there was so much reporting, and I understand some of it to have been pushed out by her associates, around her role and influence when children in Syria were gassed. She got Daddy to bomb the empty, abandoned airstrip. Can she not get Daddy to fire Alex Acosta?
It's funny how influence works with Ivanka Trump. I wrote a story last week after she came back from her trip in Japan and sitting in a meeting with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, and I said, she's had such a powerful role on the world stage. What's your comment on what's happening at the border and children there? You're in the White House in a role that's supposed to be advocating for women and children. So here's your chance to advocate, and there was no response back to my multiple requests for comment. So her advocacy and her voice in the White House is selective. This is someone who has carved out a role in the West Wing where she is talking about issues like human trafficking and advocating for women in the workforce. How are you going to do that with a labor secretary who is accused of letting a guy who was trafficking young children go not that long ago? It's a very difficult line to try and walk, and she's not walking it very well right now.
And you've sought comment specifically on her position about Secretary Acosta.
I have not asked about this comment about this. This is something that I absolutely want to pursue, but I have pursued this kind of inquiry for 4 years now. I have never gotten a satisfactory.
When you get it, come back here
You're first
and
to
share
know
with us.
it.
It's just no, but I mean, not singling her out, but she is the only one who, one, pushes out stories about her influence with her father, and two, has branded herself as the country's protector of women and children.
And she
Let me tell
works
you,
with Secretary Acosta on a lot of things. She appears publicly with him.
if she's our protector of women and children, we're bleeped.
Can I make one
Yeah.
quick point before you have to go? There is one big hero in this whole story, and that's the Miami Herald and that
Julie
dogged
K.
investigative
Brown,
reporter.
absolutely.
Like, they stuck with this story. It was years old. They published, thousands of lines of print about it. They stayed with it. I mean, that's the importance in this administration of this kind of investigative reporting and the courage to publish it.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.